Love can conquer all, they say, for the Habsburgs. Love was a tool, a weapon, a strategy. Forget grand armies clashing on bloody fields. Forget cunning diplomats whispering in shadowy corners. For centuries, one of Europe's most powerful dynasties built an empire that stretched across continents, not through conquest, but through something far more intimate: marriage. Their family motto wasn't "might makes right," but "let others wage war, you, happy Austria, marry." And marry they did. These were not fairy tale unions. These were calculated risks, high stakes, gambles where personal happiness was a distant second to political gain. A single wedding could redraw maps, launch navies, or plunge empires into decades of war. From whispered negotiations to lavish ceremonies, from unexpected passions to bitter betrayals, these 8 marriages did more than unite 2 people. They changed the entire course of human history. Number 8. Leopold I and Margaret Theresa of Spain. The year was 1666. Europe held its breath, the air thick with anticipation not of war, but of a wedding. In Madrid, the young Infanta Margaret Theresa, a daughter of the mighty Spanish Habsburgs, prepared to leave her sun-drenched homeland. Her destination: Vienna, the heart of the Austrian Habsburg Empire. Her groom, her own uncle, Emperor Leopold I. Such unions, though common among royalty to keep power within the family, carried immense weight, especially for a dynasty obsessed with its lineage and survival. Margaret Theresa was just 15 years old. She was small, with the characteristic Habsburg jaw, but possessed a lively intelligence and a spirited nature. She had grown up in the opulent, strict world of the Spanish court, immortalized in the famous paintings of Velázquez, who captured her as a child in Las Meninas. Her father, Philip IV of Spain, had finally secured a male heir, Charles, a fragile and sickly boy, but the Spanish line remained precariously thin. This marriage to Leopold was a testament to the enduring bond between the 2 branches of the Habsburg family, a bond forged over centuries of shared blood and ambition. It was also a critical strategic move. Leopold, 10 years her senior, was a scholarly and pious man, more interested in music and theology than the brutal realities of court politics. He was serious, thoughtful, and perhaps a little awkward. He had been trained for the church, but the unexpected deaths of his elder brothers had thrust him onto the imperial throne. Now he needed an heir and a powerful alliance. Margaret Theresa was the perfect choice. She brought with her a substantial dowry, a promise of continued Spanish friendship, and, most importantly, a direct link to the Spanish succession. Her mother was Leopold's own sister, Maria Anna, making the couple double first cousins. The journey from Madrid to Vienna was not a simple carriage ride. It was a royal progress, a diplomatic procession that took months winding its way through Spain, Italy, and over the Alps. Margaret Theresa traveled with a massive retinue, including ladies-in-waiting, servants, chaplains, and guards. Towns and cities along the route celebrated her passage with feasts, fireworks, and elaborate ceremonies. It was a spectacle designed to impress a moving testament to the wealth and power of the 2 great Habsburg branches. Each stop was a reaffirmation of the alliance being forged. When she finally arrived in Vienna in December 1666, the city exploded with joy. The imperial wedding was a truly extravagant affair, marking the culmination of months of preparation. The festivities lasted for weeks, featuring grand operas, ballets, jousting tournaments, and lavish banquets. For a family known for its solemnity, these celebrations were unusually magnificent. A public display of Habsburg grandeur and optimism. Leopold, despite his reserved nature, was apparently charmed by his vivacious young bride. Margaret Theresa, for her part, was homesick, but determined to fulfill her duty. She quickly learned German, a sign of her commitment to her new life and her new role as Empress. Their early years together seemed genuinely happy. The Emperor, known for his devotion to God, also showed devotion to his young wife. She was soon pregnant, and the court held its breath, hoping for a robust male heir. Children came, though many did not survive. Infancy, a common tragedy in royal families of the era. Their first child, Archduchess Maria Antonia, born in 1669, was the one who survived to adulthood. She was a healthy, intelligent girl, and her birth solidified Margaret Theresa's position. But the pressures mounted for a male heir. Margaret Theresa endured multiple pregnancies, each one a strain on her delicate health, the court whispered. The dynastic future weighed heavily. After 4 more children who either died in infancy or were stillborn, Margaret Theresa's health began to fail. Her characteristic liveliness faded, replaced by constant illness. The grand celebrations of her arrival were a distant memory. The weight of her duties, the multiple pregnancies, and the constant demand for a healthy male heir took their toll. In 1673, after only 7 years of marriage, Margaret Theresa died at the age of 21. Leopold was reportedly devastated by her death. She had given him a daughter, Maria Antonia, who would become a key figure in the dramatic events to come. Though her life was tragically short, Margaret Theresa's marriage had profound, unforeseen consequences. Her brief time as empress helped to secure the direct lineage between the Spanish and Austrian Habsburgs. Through her daughter, Maria Antonia would later marry Maximilian I Emmanuel, Elector of Bavaria. Their son, Joseph Ferdinand, would be put forward as an heir to the Spanish throne. By the childless King Charles II of Spain, Margaret Theresa's frail, younger brother. This proposal, backed by the Spanish king and France, seemed like a viable solution to the impending succession crisis. However, Joseph Ferdinand's untimely death in 1699 shattered these plans and reopened the question of the Spanish succession. The various European powers, including France, Austria, and England, each had their own candidate and their own strategic interests in the vast Spanish Empire. The claims of Maria Antonia's son, stemming directly from Margaret Theresa's marriage to Leopold, were a major factor in the complex web of succession claims. Without this marriage, Maria Antonia would not have existed, and a major claimant to the Spanish throne would have been absent from the picture. The vacuum left by Charles II's impending death, coupled with the intricate genealogical claims arising from unions like Margaret Theresa's, created an explosive situation. The stage was set for a conflict that would engulf the entire continent. The marriage of a young infanta and a studious emperor, seemingly a traditional dynastic alliance, had sown the seeds for the War of the Spanish Succession, a global conflict that lasted from 1701 to 1714 and reshaped the balance of power in Europe, tearing apart empires and claiming countless lives. Margaret Theresa's short life and her single surviving child became an unexpected catalyst for one of Europe's longest and most devastating wars, proving that even a quiet, dutiful queen could unknowingly light the fuse of a continent-wide inferno. Number 7. Maria Theresa and Francis Stephen of Lorraine. The 1730s were a tense time for the Habsburgs. The male line was teetering on the edge of extinction. Emperor Charles VI, the last surviving male Habsburg of the direct line, had no sons. He had spent years tirelessly negotiating with Europe's powers, securing their agreement to a document known as the Pragmatic Sanction. This document aimed to ensure that his eldest daughter, Maria Theresa, could inherit all the Habsburg lands. Something unheard of for a woman in an age of male primogeniture, but promises on paper were one thing. The harsh realities of power politics were quite another. For Maria Theresa to truly secure her inheritance and keep the vast Habsburg domains united, she needed a strong, capable husband. But more than that, she needed to continue the dynasty. The stakes could not have been higher. From a young age, she showed a remarkable intelligence, a strong will, and a deep sense of duty. She was beautiful with a regal bearing and a direct gaze. But she also had a secret. She was deeply in love. Her heart belonged not to some distant politically advantageous prince, but to Francis Stephen, Duke of Lorraine. Lorraine was a small, independent duchy on the border of France and the Holy Roman Empire, a strategically important but vulnerable territory. Francis Stephen was handsome, charming, and intelligent. A man who shared Maria Theresa's love for music and intellectual pursuits, he had been raised at the Viennese court from a young age, a move orchestrated by Maria Theresa's father, who had taken an interest in him and his small duchy. Their childhood friendship had blossomed into a genuine, passionate affection. This was a love match, a rarity in royal circles, but it was also a politically complex. Francis Stephen's Lorraine was coveted by France, and his family had historical claims. Charles VI, while fond of Francis, knew he could not risk war with France for Lorraine. A painful compromise was reached. Francis Stephen would have to give up his ancestral Duchy of Lorraine to France in exchange for the Grand Duchy of Tuscany in Italy. This was a bitter pill for Francis Stephen, a sacrifice demanded by his future father-in-law to secure a lasting peace and the recognition of Maria Theresa's succession. It was a stark reminder that even love could not escape the brutal calculations of dynastic power. The wedding took place on February 12, 1736, in Vienna. It was a joyous occasion for the couple, but underneath the celebrations lay the heavy burden of the pragmatic sanction and the delicate balance of European power. For Maria Theresa, it was the start of her greatest challenge, a challenge that hinged not just on her own strength, but on the strength of her husband and the heirs they would produce. Their marriage was, by all accounts, a profoundly happy one. This was no cold dynastic arrangement. Maria Theresa adored Francis, and he returned her affection. She relied on his counsel and support throughout their lives, especially during the tumultuous early years of her reign. They had an extraordinary number of children, 16 in total, a testament to their deep bond and a vital component of Habsburg dynastic survival. Among them were two future Holy Roman emperors, Joseph II and Leopold II, and one future Queen of France, Marie Antoinette. This prolificacy was not just a personal blessing, it was a political triumph. Each child born helped solidify the future of the Habsburg dynasty, offering multiple avenues for alliances and continuing the family line. However, the pragmatic sanction for all Charles VI's efforts proved to be little more than a scrap of paper after his death in 1740. No sooner had Maria Theresa inherited the vast Habsburg lands than her claims were challenged by a host of European rulers who saw an opportunity to dismember the weak female-ruled empire. Frederick the Great of Prussia launched an invasion of Silesia, sparking the War of the Austrian Succession. Maria Theresa, though pregnant with her first child at the time, rose to the challenge with extraordinary courage and determination. She famously appeared before the Hungarian Diet, holding her infant son, Joseph, and appealed for their support, earning their fervent loyalty. Francis Stephen, while lacking military genius, provided unwavering moral support to his wife. He managed the finances and administration, freeing Maria Theresa to focus on the war and diplomacy. He was crowned Holy Roman Emperor in 1745, a title that lent prestige to the Habsburg house. Though the real power lay with Maria Theresa, he was less interested in governance than in science and business, becoming a successful and wealthy man through his private ventures, which in turn helped fund his wife's wars. The War of the Austrian Succession was a brutal 8-year struggle. Maria Theresa, against all odds, managed to hold on to most of her hereditary lands. Though she lost Silesia to Prussia, her resilience and leadership earned her the respect of her adversaries and the fierce loyalty of her subjects. Her reign was one of the most tuile in Habsburg history, marked by sweeping reforms in education, military, and administration. But at the heart of it all was her marriage to Francis Stephen. Their union was not just a personal love story. It was the essential foundation for the very survival of the Habsburg monarchy. Their 16 children created a vast network of alliances and a secure line of succession, ensuring that the dynasty would continue through the new house of Habsburg-Lorraine. When Francis Stephen died unexpectedly in 1765, Maria Theresa was heartbroken. She never remarried and wore mourning black for the rest of her life, a powerful testament to her devotion. Their marriage, born of love and sealed by political sacrifice, had been instrumental in preserving the Habsburg Empire against seemingly insurmountable odds. It ensured the continuation of one of Europe's longest reigning dynasties, extending its reach and influence for another century and a half. Without Maria Theresa's fierce determination and the loving, productive partnership she shared with Francis Stephen, the Habsburg Empire might very well have crumbled, irrevocably altering the map and political landscape of Central Europe. Their love story, however rare in royal annals, proved to be an unstoppable force, a dynastic miracle that literally changed the course of history. Number 6. Philip II and Anna of Austria. The year was 1570, and Philip II of Spain, arguably the most powerful monarch in Europe, was a widower for the third time. His personal life had been a series of dynastic calculations and personal tragedies. His first wife, Maria of Portugal, died shortly after giving birth to his only son and heir, Don Carlos, a prince whose erratic behavior and eventual death under mysterious circumstance. His second wife was Mary I of England, an alliance designed to bring England into the Spanish sphere, but their marriage was childless and short-lived. His third wife, Elizabeth of Valois, daughter of the French king, gave him 2 daughters, but no sons. Before her untimely death, Philip, in his mid-40s, knew his duty. The vast Spanish Empire, stretching from the Americas to the Philippines, needed a clear and stable succession. He needed a male heir, and he needed one quickly. The solution came predictably from the Austrian branch of the Habsburg family. The bride chosen was his niece Anna of Austria, the eldest daughter of his first cousin, Emperor Maximilian II. This was a familiar pattern for the Habsburgs, intermarrying to consolidate power and keep wealth within the family. But for Philip, this marriage was more than just tradition. It was an urgent necessity. Anna was only 20 years old, young enough to bear many children. She was described as intelligent, gentle, and pious, qualities that appealed to the devout and reserved Spanish king. The marriage was negotiated carefully, with emissaries traveling between Madrid and Vienna. For Anna, it meant leaving the more relaxed, intellectually vibrant court of her father, Maximilian II, for the austere, heavily ritualized court of Spain. It was a daunting prospect, especially given her groom's formidable reputation. The journey from Prague to Spain was long and arduous. Anna traveled through Germany, over the Alps and through Italy, finally reaching the Spanish coast by ship. She was greeted with immense fanfare, a celebration of the renewed ties between the two great Habsburg powers. The wedding took place in Segovia in November 1570. It was a grand affair fitting for the most powerful king in Christendom. Philip, though older and more world-weary than his young bride, was said to have been pleased with Anna. She was respectful, devout, and seemed to understand her immense duty to the dynasty. For Anna, the transition to Spanish court life was challenging. The strict etiquette, the heavy clothing, the emphasis on religious devotion, it was all a stark contrast to her childhood. Yet she adapted with grace, earning the respect of the Spanish nobility and, crucially, the affection of her husband. The most important aspect of their union was the expectation of children, specifically male heirs, and Anna delivered. Over the next decade, she bore Philip 5 children, 4 of whom were sons. This was an astonishingly high number of male heirs, in an era when infant mortality rates were tragically high even for royalty. Her first child, Ferdinand, born in 1571, was greeted with immense relief and celebration. He was followed by Carlos Lorenzo, Diego Felix, and finally, Philip, born in 1578. The birth of each son strengthened the Spanish succession, providing a sense of stability that had been dangerously lacking after the death of Don Carlos. The future of the vast Spanish Empire, its American colonies, its European territories, and its immense wealth now seemed secure. Anna had fulfilled her duty in the most profound way possible. Tragically, Only her last son Philip survived to adulthood. Ferdinand died at age 7, Carlos Lorenzo at less than a year, and Diego Felix at age 6. Each death was a blow, but the survival of the youngest Philip provided a glimmer of hope amidst the grief. Anna herself died in 1580 at the young age of 31, after giving birth to her last child Maria, who also died shortly after. Philip was once again a widower, but this time he had a surviving male heir, the future Philip III. Anna's life, though brief, was profoundly evil. She had done what 3 previous queens had failed to do: secure the direct male line of succession for the Spanish Habsburgs. Her marriage to Philip II and the subsequent birth of Philip III ensured the continuation of the Spanish Habsburg dynasty for another 80 years. Philip III would go on to rule the vast Spanish Empire, passing it down to his son Philip IV, and then to his grandson Charles II. While the Spanish Habsburgs would eventually die out with the sickly Charles II, leading to the War of the Spanish Succession. Anna's contributions bought the dynasty crucial time and stability. Without her, the succession crisis might have erupted decades earlier, with unpredictable and potentially devastating consequences for European power dynamics. She had provided the essential link, the precious male heir who kept the Spanish Empire under Habsburg rule for generations. Her quiet duty and prolific childbearing, largely overlooked by history in favor of more dramatic figures, were the very foundation upon which the Spanish Golden Age continued to flourish. Anna of Austria, the dutiful fourth wife, played an indispensable role in shaping the destiny of an empire, simply by fulfilling her primary royal purpose, giving birth to a king. Number 5. Philip II and Mary I of England. The year 1554 brought an extraordinary event to England: the marriage of its Catholic queen, Mary I, to Philip, Prince of Asturias, and heir to the Spanish throne. It was a monumental political gamble, a calculated risk by 2 determined monarchs and their advisors, aimed at fundamentally reshaping the religious and political landscape of Europe. Mary, daughter of Henry VIII and Catherine of Aragon, had inherited a kingdom fractured by religious upheaval. Her father's break with Rome and the subsequent Protestant reforms under her half-brother, Edward VI, had left England deeply divided. Mary, a staunch Catholic, was determined to restore England to the true faith. To do this, she needed a powerful ally, a Catholic champion. Philip, son of Emperor Charles V, was that champion. He represented the immense power of the Spanish Habsburg Empire, the bastion of Catholic Europe. The idea of a Spanish marriage was met with fierce opposition in England. Nationalists and Protestants feared that England would become a mere province of Spain, its resources drained, its identity subsumed. There were widespread protests, even rebellions, but Mary was unyielding. She believed this marriage was God's will, the only path to saving England's soul. Philip, for his part, was a prince in his late 20s, shrewd, ambitious, and deeply committed to the Catholic cause. He was less than thrilled by the prospect of marrying an older queen who was 38, 11 years his senior, and whose reputation for harshness preceded her. But his duty to his father, Charles V, and the grand strategy of uniting England with the Habsburg domains outweighed his personal preferences. The marriage contract was meticulously drawn up, attempting to assuage English fears. Philip would be King of England, but only jointly with Mary. He would have no claim to the English throne should Mary die without heirs, nor could he appoint Spaniards to English offices or take England into Spain's wars without Parliament's consent. The wedding took place at Winchester Cathedral in July 1554. It was a grand but solemn affair. Philip arrived with a vast Spanish retinue, whose foreign customs and haughty demeanor did little to endear them to the English populace. Mary, dressed in a gown adorned with diamonds and pearls, looked radiant. Contemporary accounts suggest that despite the political nature of the match, there was a brief period of affection between the two. Philip, who is accustomed to a more formal court, was reportedly surprised and pleased by Mary's vivacity and devotion. He even attempted to learn a few English phrases. For a short while, Mary seemed happy, convinced that this union would bring her the heir she desperately desired and secure England's Catholic future. The primary goal of the marriage was to produce a Catholic heir, a child who would inherit both England and the vast Spanish Empire. Mary soon believed herself to be pregnant, experiencing symptoms that convinced her husband, and her court. Prayers were offered, nurseries prepared, and the kingdom held its breath. This phantom pregnancy, however, turned out to be a tragic delusion, likely brought on by the immense psychological pressure and her failing health. The disappointment was crushing for Mary personally and for the future of her religious reforms. Philip, realizing there would be no direct heir, began to spend more time away from England, focusing on his Spanish and European affairs. His presence, initially seen as a symbol of power, became increasingly resented by the English, who felt their queen was neglected and their country exploited. The marriage, though personally challenging, had immediate and dramatic consequences for England. It led to the country's full reconciliation with the Roman Catholic Church, a move fiercely resisted by many and enforced with brutal severity, earning Mary the grim epithet Bloody Mary. English religious policy became inextricably linked with Spanish foreign policy. England joined Spain in its war against France, a disastrous decision that led to the loss of Calais, England's last continental possession, a humiliating blow to national pride. More significantly, the marriage pushed England further into the orbit of Catholic Europe, fueling the very Protestant sentiments that would define the reign of Mary's successor. When Mary died in November 1558, without having produced an heir, the personal and political alliance abruptly ended. Philip, now King of Spain, after his father Charles V's abdication, had no claim to the English throne. The crown passed to Mary's Protestant half-sister, Elizabeth. The failure of the marriage to produce an heir and Mary's death meant that England, instead of becoming a junior partner in a vast Catholic Habsburg empire, swung dramatically back towards Protestantism. This solidified England's Protestant identity under Elizabeth I, setting the stage for decades of fierce rivalry and eventual war between Protestant England and Catholic Spain. The marriage of Philip and Mary, though ultimately childless, was a pivotal moment. It briefly reoriented English foreign policy, ignited intense religious conflict, and perhaps, most importantly, by its failure, cemented England's distinct national and religious path, separate from continental Catholic powers. Without this attempted union and its subsequent collapse, the future relationship between England and Spain, and indeed the trajectory of the English Reformation, might have been entirely different. It was a grand experiment in dynastic consolidation that in its very failure profoundly shaped the destinies of two great nations and the religious landscape of Europe for centuries to come. Number 4. Charles V and Isabella of Portugal. The year was 1526, and the most powerful ruler in Europe, Emperor Charles V, was finally ready to marry. For years, marriage proposals had poured in from every major court: England, France, Denmark, even Hungary. But Charles, the grandson of Ferdinand and Isabella of Spain, and Maximilian I, and Mary of Burgundy, and heir to an empire on which the sun never set, had postponed his decision. He was already King of Spain, Archduke of Austria, Lord of the Netherlands, and Holy Roman Emperor-elect. He controlled vast territories in Europe and the burgeoning empires in the Americas. His power was immense, but so were his needs. He needed a wife who could provide a stable succession, yes, but also one who could bring a dowry substantial enough to fund his endless wars against France, the Ottoman Empire, and the Protestant princes of Germany. The chosen bride was Isabella of Portugal, his first cousin. By Charles, Isabella was a grandchild of the legendary Catholic monarchs, Ferdinand and Isabella, making her a direct link to the Iberian Peninsula's immense wealth and colonial ambitions. She was also beautiful, intelligent, and known for her strong character. For Charles, the match was perfect. It was a traditional Habsburg-style union, reinforcing family ties and eliminating a potential rival claim to Spain or Portugal. But more than that, Isabella's dowry was legendary. Portugal, at the height of its maritime power, controlled a vast trade empire in Asia, Africa, and Brazil. Her dowry was an unprecedented 900,000 Portuguese cruzados, a sum so enormous it made even Charles V, who constantly juggled immense debts, sit up and take notice. This wasn't just gold. It was an influx of real, usable cash, vital for funding his imperial ambitions. The wedding took place in Seville in March 1526. Unlike many royal marriages of convenience, this one was said to have been a genuine love match. Charles, usually reserved and focused on matters of state, was deeply smitten with his beautiful and intelligent bride. Isabella, for her part, found her husband charming and attentive. Their union was marked by mutual respect and affection, a rarity in an age of arranged dynastic alliances. Isabella quickly proved herself to be far more than just a beautiful consort. She was a shrewd administrator, a diligent politician, and a highly capable regent. While Charles was constantly traveling across his vast empire, battling rivals and managing religious upheavals, Isabella remained in Spain, governing the kingdom with remarkable competence. She managed the finances, dealt with internal rebellions, and oversaw the growing Spanish colonial empire in the Americas. Her intelligence and strong will ensured that Spain, the financial heart of Charles's empire, remained stable and prosperous. In his frequent absences, their marriage was also incredibly fruitful. Isabella bore Charles 5 children, 3 of whom survived to adulthood. Philip, the future Philip II of Spain, who would inherit the vast Spanish Empire; Maria, who married her cousin Maximilian II, the future Holy Roman Emperor; and Joanna, who would become regent of Spain. For her brother, the birth of a healthy male heir, Philip, was of paramount importance. It secured the direct line of succession for the Spanish Habsburgs, ensuring that Charles's monumental efforts to consolidate his vast territories would not be undone by a lack of an heir. Philip II would inherit not just Spain, but its Italian possessions, the Low Countries, and the colossal overseas empire, forming the bedrock of the Spanish Golden Age. However, Isabella's constant pregnancies took a heavy toll on her health. She died in 1539 after a miscarriage, at the age of only 35. Charles was utterly devastated by her death. He reportedly locked himself away for weeks, grieving profoundly. He never remarried, a testament to his deep love for her. He spent the rest of his life dressed in black, a silent mourning for his lost wife. Isabella's impact on Charles V's reign was immeasurable. Her immense dowry provided the crucial financial lifeline that allowed Charles to fund his wars and maintain his vast dispersed empire. It was Isabella's wealth, derived from Portugal's spice trade and colonial ventures, that helped pay for the armies that fought in Italy, the fleets that patrolled the Mediterranean, and the campaigns against the Ottomans. Without this influx of cash, Charles V's ability to wage war and project power across Europe would have been severely hampered. Furthermore, Isabella's capable regency in Spain ensured that the economic engine of the Habsburg Empire continued to function efficiently, even when Charles was abroad for years at a time. She was the anchor that held the Spanish portion of his empire together, allowing him the freedom to engage in the larger European political arena. Her most lasting legacy, beyond her crucial financial contributions, was her son, Philip II. It was through Philip that the Spanish Habsburg line continued ruling Spain and its vast overseas possessions for another century and a half. Isabella of Portugal was not merely a royal consort. She was a vital partner in one of history's greatest empires. Her beauty, intelligence, and immense dowry provided Charles V with the necessary resources and stability to navigate the turbulent waters of 16th century Europe. Her strategic marriage, combined with her administrative acumen and her ability to produce the crucial heir, fundamentally shaped the course of Charles V's reign, and by extension the trajectory of European history. She was the financial bedrock and the dynastic guarantee for an empire that truly spanned the globe. Without her, it is questionable if Charles V could have achieved all he did. Number 3. Ferdinand I and Anna of Bohemia and Hungary. The year was 1521, and the Habsburgs were in the midst of a spectacular rise. Emperor Charles V, ruler of an empire stretching from Spain to the New World, was at the pinnacle of his power, but his younger brother Ferdinand had his own destiny to carve. Ferdinand, intelligent and ambitious, was entrusted with the Habsburg ancestral lands in Austria. To expand Habsburg influence further eastward and secure a strategic alliance against the rising Ottoman threat, a crucial marriage was orchestrated. Ferdinand would marry Anna, the only sister of King Louis II of Bohemia and Hungary. At the same time, Louis would marry Ferdinand's sister, Mary of Hungary. This double marriage alliance, negotiated years earlier in the Treaty of Vienna in 1515, was a masterful stroke of dynastic diplomacy designed to unite the ruling houses of Austria, Bohemia, and Hungary. Anna was a princess of the Jagiellonian dynasty, a powerful Polish-Lithuanian house that had ruled Bohemia and Hungary for generations. She was a young woman, only 18 years old at the time of her wedding, known for her piety and gentle nature. Ferdinand at 23 was more serious and reserved than his adventurous brother Charles, but possessed a keen political mind. The marriage took place in Linz, Austria on May 25, 1521. It was a less ostentatious affair than some Habsburg weddings, reflecting the seriousness of the political stakes involved. For Anna, it meant leaving her royal family and entering the world of the ambitious Habsburgs. For Ferdinand, it meant securing a potential claim to two kingdoms that lay on the volatile eastern frontier of Europe, right in the path of the expanding Ottoman Empire. Initially, the marriage seemed like a conventional dynastic bond, strengthening existing alliances. Ferdinand and Anna seemed to have a genuinely affectionate relationship, a rarity in arranged royal marriages. They were compatible in temperament and shared a deep devotion to their Catholic faith. Anna quickly became a supportive and trusted confidant to her husband, providing him with invaluable advice and emotional support throughout their lives together. But the true significance of their union would only become apparent a few years later, in the most tragic and unexpected way. In 1526, a mere 5 years after their wedding disaster struck, King Louis II of Bohemia and Hungary, Anna's brother and Ferdinand's brother-in-law, led his forces against the mighty Ottoman army of Sultan Suleiman the Magnificent. At the Battle of Mohacs, it was a catastrophic defeat for the Christian forces. Louis II, still a young man, was killed in the battle, drowning in a bog while trying to escape. His death left a power vacuum in both Bohemia and Hungary, two strategically vital kingdoms. With Louis dead and no direct male heir, the terms of the 1515 marriage treaty suddenly sprang into action. Through his marriage to Anna, Ferdinand now had a legitimate claim to both the Bohemian and Hungarian thrones. The acquisition of these two kingdoms was not immediate or simple. Bohemia, recognizing the strength of Ferdinand's claim and the need for a strong ruler to defend against the Ottomans, elected him as their king in October 1526. Hungary was a different story. The Hungarian nobility was deeply divided, with some supporting Ferdinand and others backing a rival claimant, John Zápolya, a powerful Hungarian magnate. This led to decades of internal conflict and a fragmented Hungary, with one part under Habsburg rule, another under Ottoman occupation, and a third under Zápolya's control. Despite the struggles, Ferdinand's marriage to Anna provided the crucial legitimate basis for the Habsburg claim to these lands. It allowed the Habsburgs to establish a foothold in Central Europe that would endure for centuries. Anna herself died in 1547 after giving birth to 15 children. Her prolific childbearing further solidified the Habsburg succession in these newly acquired lands. Among their many children were sons who would go on to rule various Habsburg territories, and daughters who would marry into other European royal houses. strengthening the family's network of alliances. Her children ensured the continuity of the Habsburg dynasty in the lands of the Bohemian crown, and those parts of Hungary that came under Habsburg control. The marriage of Ferdinand and Anna was a turning point for the Habsburg monarchy, transforming them from primarily Western and Central European powers into a major force in East Central Europe. It fundamentally shifted the focus of Habsburg ambition and policy, drawing them into centuries of conflict with the Ottoman Empire. The acquisition of Bohemia brought immense wealth, a vibrant culture, and strategic depth to the Habsburg domains. The partial acquisition of Hungary provided a crucial buffer against Ottoman expansion into Western Europe, albeit at a heavy cost in terms of continuous warfare. This marriage and the tragic circumstances that followed laid the foundation for the sprawling, multi-ethnic Austro-Hungarian Empire that would dominate Central Europe until the early 20th century. Without Anna's hand in marriage, and the subsequent death of her brother the Habsburgs would likely never have expanded so dramatically eastward, and the map of Central Europe would have looked vastly different for centuries to come. It was a marriage that by pure chance and tragedy reshaped an entire continent. Number 2. Philip I, the Handsome, and Joanna of Castile. The year was 1496, and two young people from the most powerful dynasties in Europe were about to meet for the first time, their union painstakingly arranged to cement an alliance that would redraw the map of Europe. Philip, Archduke of Austria and heir to the vast Burgundian and Habsburg lands, was known as the Handsome, for good reason. He was minute, athletic, and possessed a dashing charm that captivated those around him. Joanna, Infanta of Castile and Aragon, was one of the many children of the legendary Catholic monarchs. Ferdinand and Isabella of Spain, whose marriage had unified Spain and launched its ambitious overseas empire. This marriage, a double wedding designed to isolate France, also saw Philip's sister, Margaret of Austria, marry Joanna's brother, John. The initial encounter between Philip and Joanna in Lille, Flanders, was anything but formal. Joanna, brought up in the strict pious court of Spain, was deeply intelligent, but also prone to intense emotions. Philip, raised in the more liberal and extravagant court of Burgundy, was vivacious and worldly. Historical accounts suggest that their meeting sparked an immediate, undeniable passion. Philip, eager to consummate the marriage, even dismissed the official ceremony, leading to a hasty private wedding later that same day. This impulsive act was shocking for royal custom, but hinted at the fierce, almost obsessive attraction that would define their tumultuous relationship. Their early years together were marked by intense passion, but also by growing discord. Joanna, deeply in love, became fiercely jealous of Philip's philandering. Her volatile emotions, combined with her deep devotion, earned her a reputation for instability, especially among the Burgundian court, who found her intensely Spanish piety and solemnity unsettling. She was deeply suspicious of Philip's affections and would erupt in furious jealousy at the slightest perceived slight. Philip, for his part, found her intensity stifling and continued his liaisons, which only fueled Joanna's despair and outbursts. Then fate intervened in the most dramatic way. Joanna was originally not destined for the Spanish throne, but one by one a series of tragic deaths befell her family. Her elder brother John died in 1497, followed by her elder sister Isabella in 1498. Isabella's infant son Miguel, the designated heir, also died in 1500. Suddenly, unexpectedly, Joanna found herself the direct heiress to the vast and wealthy kingdoms of Castile and Aragon, with their burgeoning empire in the New World. This was a seismic shift. Her marriage to Philip, initially a mere alliance, now carried the immense weight of uniting the Habsburg and Spanish empires under one roof. In 1504, Joanna's formidable mother, Isabella I of Castile, died. Joanna, now Queen of Castile and Philip, as her consort left Flanders for Spain, Philip, ambitious and eager for power, immediately began to assert his authority in Castile. This put him at direct odds with Joanna's father, Ferdinand II of Aragon, who was determined to retain control of Castile. and felt his daughter was unfit to rule. The power struggle was intense, with Joanna caught tragically in the middle. Her emotional state, exacerbated by the political turmoil and her husband's infidelities, continued to deteriorate. Contemporary accounts often describe her as descending into profound melancholia and erratic behavior. Philip's reign as King of Castile was brief. He died suddenly in 1506, possibly of typhoid fever, leaving Joanna heartbroken and deeply unstable. Her grief was so profound that it became legendary. She refused to allow Philip's coffin to be buried for years, insisting on keeping it with her, traveling with it across Castile. This behavior, alongside her increasingly withdrawn and unpredictable nature, cemented her tragic reputation as Joanna the Mad. Her father Ferdinand and later her son Charles deemed her incapable of ruling. She was effectively confined, first by her father, then by her son, for the rest of her long life primarily at the royal convent of Santa Clara in Tordesillas. Despite her personal tragedy and her confinement, Joanna remained the rightful Queen of Castile until her death in 1555. This was crucial. Her confinement meant that her son Charles could rule in her stead. Initially as regent and then as sovereign, Philip and Joanna's children were the bridge between the Habsburgs and the Spanish thrones. Their eldest son, the future Charles V, inherited the Burgundian and Austrian lands from his paternal grandparents, and the vast Spanish kingdoms and their American empires from his maternal grandparents. This single marriage, though fraught with personal drama and tragedy, brought together an unprecedented concentration of power and wealth. The consequences were monumental. Charles V, the product of this union, became the ruler of an empire so vast that it truly spanned the globe. He inherited an empire that would shape European politics, religion, and economy for centuries. He confronted the Protestant Reformation, fought the Ottoman Empire, and expanded the Spanish colonial enterprise in the Americas. The wealth from the New World funneled through Spain, funded his armies, and allowed him to project Habsburg power on a scale never before seen. The union of the Low Countries, Austria, Spain, and its colonial wealth, under one ruler, fund him into the marriage of Philip and Joanna, a whirlwind of love, jealousy, and immense political consequence, created the foundation for the global Spanish Habsburg Empire. It was a union that, through a series of unexpected deaths, transformed a relatively minor princely marriage into the cornerstone of a world-spanning dynasty, changing the course of global exploration, trade, and power dynamics for centuries. Number 1. Maximilian I and Mary of Burgundy. The year was 1477, and the stakes were impossibly high. The powerful Duchy of Burgundy, a rich and culturally vibrant territory nestled between France and the Holy Roman Empire, was suddenly vulnerable. Its formidable ruler, Charles the Bold, had just been killed in battle, leaving behind no male heir, only his young daughter, Mary. Mary, now the wealthiest heiress in Europe, was barely 20 years old. She controlled vast and strategically important lands, the affluent Low Countries, the prosperous Duchy of Burgundy, and important territories in Alsace and Lorraine. Her hand in marriage was coveted by every major European power, none more so than France, whose King Louis XI immediately seized parts of her inheritance. Including the Duchy of Burgundy itself, Mary needed a protector, a strong husband who could defend her lands and her independence against the encroaching French king, her advisors, and indeed Mary herself knew that this marriage was not merely a personal choice, but a matter of dynastic survival. From the east across the Rhine came the offer of Maximilian, Archduke of Austria, son of the Holy Roman Emperor Frederick III. Maximilian was young, only 18, with a reputation for chivalry, intelligence, and a love of adventure. He was also crucially a Habsburg, representing a powerful and rising dynasty. For the Habsburgs, this marriage offered an unimaginable prize: The wealth and strategic position of Burgundy, a jewel that would transform their landlocked Austrian domains into a major European power. The negotiations were fraught with tension, overshadowed by French aggression. Mary, against the wishes of some of her advisors who favored a French match, made her choice clear. She sent a ring to Maximilian, a symbolic gesture for acceptance. Maximilian, eager for the challenge and the immense rewards, set out immediately. His journey to Ghent, where Mary resided, was a daring dash through hostile territories. When he finally arrived in August 1477, Mary, dressed in a magnificent gown, met him. It was said to be a genuine connection from the start. Maximilian was reportedly struck by her beauty and grace, and Mary was impressed by his chivalry and charm. The wedding itself was a relatively simple affair, overshadowed by the ongoing war with France, but its simplicity belied its immense significance. This was more than a personal union. It was a dynastic coup, a strategic masterstroke that would fundamentally alter the political map of Europe for centuries to come. The immediate aftermath was a test of Maximilian's mettle. He bravely led Mary's Burgundian forces against the French, fighting to reclaim her rightful inheritance. Though he couldn't fully reclaim the Duchy of Burgundy from France, he successfully defended the crucial Low Countries, a region of immense commercial and strategic value. Their marriage, though brief, was remarkably happy and fruitful. They were deeply devoted to each other, sharing a love for hunting and the arts. Mary gave birth to 2 children who survived to adulthood. Philip, later known as Philip the Handsome, born in 1478, and Margaret, born in 1480. These 2 children would become the linchpins of future Habsburg expansion. But tragedy struck in 1482, just 5 years into their marriage. Mary, while out hunting with Maximilian, fell from her horse and died shortly after, at the age of only 25. Maximilian was devastated by her loss, and he never fully recovered from the grief. Despite its brevity, Mary's marriage to Maximilian had truly revolutionary consequences. First, it brought the rich and strategically vital Low Countries, modern-day Belgium and the Netherlands, into the Habsburg fold. This region, with its thriving cities, powerful merchants, and immense wealth, became a cornerstone of Habsburg power. It provided the dynasty with unprecedented financial resources and a vital outlet to the Atlantic. Second, and perhaps even more profoundly, their children became the ultimate dynastic lottery ticket. Philip the Handsome, as the heir to the Burgundian lands, would later marry Joanna of Castile, leading to the acquisition of Spain and its American empire. Their daughter Margaret would play a crucial role as a powerful regent in the Low Countries for her nephew Charles V. The marriage of Maximilian and Mary was the seed from which the vast Habsburg Empire of Charles V would grow. It was the moment when the Habsburgs, previously a powerful but largely Central European family, gained a foothold in Western Europe and access to incredible wealth. It cemented their rivalry with France for centuries, as the 2 great powers continuously vied for control of the Burgundian inheritance. Without Mary's decision to choose Maximilian over a French prince, and without their union producing 2 pivotal children, the entire trajectory of the Habsburg dynasty and the subsequent balance of power in Europe would have been radically different. It was a love story, a political gamble, and a tragic loss that laid the very foundation for an empire on which the sun never set.